Hi everyone! Welcome to another episode of Astronomy 102. I'm Ya Qin.
I'm Octave.
And we are science educators from the Science Centre Singapore. Now in this episode, we are going to be
Alright. Yeah, it's okay. So in this episode, we're going to talk about something that we all love, which is food. Right? So I believe on the screen you see a few boxes. It looks like a little bit like acrylic paint to us, but that is actually cosmonaut food. So me and Yachin, who we have unfortunately lost, hope that she will be back soon. Okay, actually tried this cosmonaut food last week, and if you are curious to find out about the taste and the look of this food, right, please stick around Facebook for this video, which will be uploaded at the end of this vodcast. Okay, and for everyone watching this vodcast, if you have any questions regarding space food, okay, keep your questions coming in through the link pinned in the comment box, and just send it to us, and we will try our best to answer them. Right, so I'm sure everyone is curious to know the difference between space food and, let's say, airplane food, right? That's the closest we get to space on an airplane, right? So can we have the visuals of an airplane food? No, we don't have the visual. Okay, so yep, that's the one. So airplane food, they looks really nice, and they are basically what we eat here on Earth as well. Not much of a difference, except that they are probably quite heavily seasoned because our senses tends to get pretty dull up in the airplane, where pressure is slightly different, okay, from what we experience down here. Then what about space food? Yachin, are you back?
yes, I'm back. So sorry, I
Yes,
disconnected.
you're gonna tell our audience about space food, the ones that we have nowadays.
Okay, so the ones that we have nowadays are usually dehydrated versions. So that's why it doesn't the normal food that we see on the airplane. So maybe we can have the visuals up so that our audience can see how space food looks like nowadays. Yep, that's right. That's how it looks like. Now, if you see that green packet of food on the right-hand side, just above the fork, that's actually dehydrated spinach. Now, or rehydrated spinach. Now, it doesn't look very, very pleasing because it's spinach. But yeah, astronauts nowadays have dehydrated food for their meals.
Yes, and the reason why they actually have to dehydrate all the food, right, is mainly two reasons. Okay, the first one is for preservation. Astronauts, especially nowadays, where they go to the ISS for missions, okay, usually it's a span of 6 months. So their food needs to be kept for a long time, and space food especially has to be what they call shelf stable, which means that, okay, you don't need to refrigerate it. You can just leave it out in the shelf, and it should not go bad, right? So that's one reason to preserve the food. A second reason is that water is actually pretty heavy and costly to bring up into space, right? And since water is always available in the as a byproduct of the shuttle's fuel cell and from the astronauts' waste, sometimes it gets purified, right? And they actually get drinking water. So all this water is actually heated up and then used to rehydrate this freeze-dried food that the astronauts eat nowadays, right? So I believe we have visuals of what the spinach looks like after it is rehydrated.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, the one that our astronaut is holding onto on the left-hand side is the one that has been rehydrated. So that was the rehydrated spinach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I see that after rehydrating, it still looks like pretty much like spinach, right? But do astronauts have special menu on different occasions?
Yes, they do. So a lot of effort is actually spent into planning the meals of astronauts, right? So people on the ground, the crews, they actually know, okay, on which day the astronaut is going to eat what kind of meal. So for special occasions, like for example, during the Dragon Boat Festival, right, they actually packed rice dumplings for the astronauts to eat up in space. Another example is during Thanksgiving, right? They actually prepare turkey for the astronauts to have their little Thanksgiving dinner up in space.
Wow. I mean, I think turkey maybe not so difficult to prepare. It can be like canned or whatever, but rice dumpling sounds really interesting. Like dried rice dumpling chips. Okay, so Octave, just now you mentioned that our taste bud will be a little different when we are on the airplane due to the air pressure of the cabin. But is that the same thing that the astronauts will experience when they are in space?
Will is it the same thing as what they experience? Yes, but the reason leading up to it is very very different. Okay, so on airplane, our taste buds become dull because of the air pressure, right? The difference in air pressure in the air, in the cabin as compared to on the ground. As for astronauts, okay, why they have this dull senses is because of this thing called the fluid shift. So on Earth, okay, gravity actually pulls on the fluid in our body and tends to go downwards, right? It pulls downwards. However, up in space where they belong in this weightless environment, right? Gravity isn't that big of a force acting on them, and as a result, okay, the fluid are free to distribute equally in their own body, which means that
Mm-hmm.
it tends to move a little more towards the head, right, than the feet, right? And this change can actually be seen visibly, okay, in the first few days of arriving in space when astronauts, right, tend to have this puffy face because the body fluids actually blocks the nasal passages.
Ah, okay. So, when you're talking about this nasal fluid blocking the nasal passages, right? It sounds like what happens when we have a cold. So, when we have a cold, our nose, our sense of smell will be affected, right? And because we know when we eat food, it's not just about taste; it's about smelling. So, well, if our nose or our sense of smell is being affected by this fluid shift, then there's a high chance that the food, if it's prepared normally, then it probably won't taste as good as they are on Earth. Is that right? And
Yes.
also, yeah, and in ISS there are like so many different odor around them. Can be good, can be bad, I don't know. So that can also affect their sense of smell. Yeah.
Yep.
So
So
what do
what do
they
you
do?
do? Yeah, what do you do when your food doesn't taste as good?
Well, I try to add a variety of condiments like ketchup or salt and pepper.
Yes, so astronauts they are given condiments as well, right? Such as hot sauce, barbecue sauce, mustard, things like this. Right. So all of these condiments are available to them to enhance the flavor of their food up in the space station as well.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. Okay, so they can still taste great tasting food in space. Now, for the audience who just joined us, if you have any questions about space food, do keep them coming by clicking on the link in the video description or the pinned comments. So if you always watch our our Facebook Live, you should know what to do. Okay, now, so Octave, we're still going to be talking about food, but are there any food that should not be consumed in space?
Well, there are a few. The common ones that we know that astronauts cannot eat in space are food with crumbs. So, for example, bread, right? Every time you eat bread, as you are fiddling around with the piece of bread, little crumbs falls onto the table. So all these crumbs, while on Earth falls to the table, in space they tend to float around, and it gets really really messy, and sometimes it can get dangerous as well, right? Imagine you're in a space station and all these crumbs find its way into machineries or into the ventilation ducts, all these things. So any food with crumbs are not allowed to be eaten in space for safety
Oh,
reasons.
but just now you mentioned about condiments, right? Then I was talking about adding salt and pepper. So salt and pepper and also other spices in the form of powder we sprinkle on top of our food. Are they not allowed in space as well?
Yes, they are not allowed in space. At least the kind of salt and pepper that we usually eat, right? For the astronauts, okay, there's a special kind of salt and pepper which we will be showing it to you. So you see these two bottles, right? Make a guess which one is salt and which one is pepper.
Well, I
Yes,
would think the one that is black in color would be pepper.
yeah, so the clear one that is actually salt and the black one is pepper. So their salt and pepper actually exist in a liquid form, right?
Mm.
Reason being, if you try to sprinkle salt in space, it will fly around, Whereas if it is in a liquid form, okay, you can actually squeeze it onto the astronaut's food, and it will adhere to the food itself. So it's clean, it will not get messy, and they still get to enjoy their salt and pepper.
Ah, I see. So it's kind of like gel-like, so it will stick to the food.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so right here, we do have some questions coming in. We have Jasmine with this question. We always hear about astronaut ice cream. Is it a real thing that we eat in space? Now, in fact, we're just going to be talking about astronaut ice cream. Now, I happen to have tasted astronaut ice cream myself. And when I open up the packaging of the astronaut ice cream, I noticed that there are crumbs on the packaging. So it does get crumpled if it's not stopped properly, right? So, Octave, do astronauts really eat these ice cream in space?
No, they don't actually eat it. These ice creams, again, they were actually developed a long time ago during the Apollo missions. So it was designed for the Apollo astronauts to eat in space. However, they were never actually brought up into space. So these ice creams were never actually eaten in space before, even though they were designed for that kind of purpose. And if you are keen to try out these astronauts ice cream, right, you can actually find them at Science Center Singapore's Curiosity Shop. Right, we do sell these ice creams which you can try for yourself.
That's right. Now, if you would like to come to the Science Center's Curiosity Shop to purchase the astronaut ice cream, do remember that we are currently now only open from Fridays to Sundays, okay, over the weekends. So if you want to purchase one for yourself, do come on Fridays, Saturdays, or Sundays. Okay, so after we talked about food, what about drinks? Now, I know for sure that alcohol is prohibited on the ISS because, I mean, we do not want our astronauts to be intoxicated in space, right? So are there any other drinks that astronauts are not allowed to drink in space?
Well, alcohol, yes, for sure. We are not even allowed to drink that while we are driving, much less when you're in space, right?
Yeah.
Even though cosmonauts, Russian astronauts in the past, long time ago, were known to drink a little bit, right? But other than alcohol, right, another drink that astronauts cannot drink is something that we here on Earth actually love a lot, or especially small children, they love a lot. You want to make a guess? What kind of drinks does kids like?
Kids, if I'm a kid, I would think it's something sweet and something that leaves this bubbly sensation to our mouth, like carbonated drinks.
Yes, carbonated drinks. So astronauts, they actually cannot drink carbonated drinks in space. Okay, why is that so? I believe all of us have opened a can of carbonated drink before, right? So when you open a can of carbonated drink, what do you first see from the drink itself?
Gas.
Gas, little bubbles that is rising to the top, right, and escaping into the atmosphere. Well, it only happens on Earth because of gravity. Water is heavier, it's denser. Gas is lighter, therefore it goes upwards and it escapes from the drink. In space, okay, all of these air bubbles will actually get trapped inside the drink, which means that if you drink, let's say, a can of carbonated drink up in space, you end up actually consuming a lot more carbon dioxide as compared to if you have that on Earth, right? And we all know that carbon dioxide doesn't really make our tummy feel very comfortable, right? So having extra carbon dioxide is just gonna make the life of, or rather the sensation of the tummy for the astronauts be pretty bad, right? And another reason is because after drinking carbonated drinks, what do you feel like doing?
I feel like the gas is gonna come out from my mouth, then I'll do a burp.
Yeah, you will want to burp, right, from all the
Yeah.
carbon dioxide that you drank. Same thing with astronauts. The only difference is, okay, burping up in space isn't as easy and as clean as what we have down here, right? So on Earth, once again, it's gravity. Gravity causes all the food and all the liquid to sink to the bottom of our stomach and all the gas to rise to the top. So when we burp, okay, the gas escapes out from our mouth, right, or from our stomach, which is good. It's a dry burp. It's clean. It's nice. But up in space, okay, imagine all this liquid, all this food, they're actually floating around in the stomach of the astronaut. And then suddenly you have a sensation to burp. What else comes out with the gas?
All the other stuff that is in your stomach.
Yes, all the lunch, the dinner that astronauts ate, or the drinks, they actually, a little bit of it will actually come out along with the gas, right? And that, just imagining it, is a little gross that is why astronauts they don't drink carbonated drinks up in space. It's not a pleasant sensation for them. It's not enjoyable at all.
Yep. And Octave, we have some questions coming in about food. Now,
Yes.
we are in fact going to lump all the questions together because we are going to be answering them in our next segment. Okay, so now let's see. Okay, Sophie asked, so why did astronauts change their kind of food from squeezy to freeze-dried? And also, Catherine was asking about food allergies. Do astronauts have to worry about them? And also, how long can food be kept in the ISS? Now, for this, we can answer them all together, basically. Now, because if we talk about the history of space food, right, it has actually come a really long way. Now, initially, when astronauts go into space, okay, the food are usually packed in tubes, okay. So remember I told you about the video that we will be sharing after this podcast. We actually tried cosmonaut food, and we actually did a taste test on all the food. So later after this podcast, you all can continue to stay and watch that video. Now, so those food are what the astronauts used to eat in the past. So, Octave, we want to talk a little bit more about those food in tube forms.
Yes, so when humans first wanted to explore space, when there was actually a need to bring food up to space, the first thing that the space agencies turned to was actually what they call combat rations, or food that your soldiers eat out in the field. Right? Why is that so? Because this kind of food, they usually have a very long shelf life, so they don't go bad and they are shelf stable. However, in this kind of food, there usually is a very high content of salt and preservatives, which isn't very healthy for the astronauts if they are up in space for a long-term mission, right? And because of that, space agencies, they actually spend a lot of money into researching new methods to preserve food, as well as how to make food a little more nutritional for the astronauts themselves, right? So food, I think some of the questions, one of the question was, why do astronauts change their food from squeezy to freeze dry? It's for this reason, for taste and for nutrition, right? Freeze drying food ensures that all the nutrition is still locked inside the food itself, right? And through all these methods as well, food destined for space shuttle missions, right? They actually have a shelf life of a year. And if these food are going to the International Space Station, then they need to have a shelf life of 18 months, which is pretty long enough, right, for the astronauts to actually have their meals. And after so many years, right, as of today, it's safe to say that most of the food that we have here on Earth can actually be brought into space through the various preservative methods that the different space agencies have come up with.
And also someone mentioned about allergies, food allergies, like Catherine. Now, because there are nutritionists developing these menus for the astronauts, we believe our astronauts will be taken very good care of. So in case they have any food allergies, then they will avoid eating certain food that's prepared for them in space. Okay, so it seems like even though astronauts are working very far away from Earth, but their food is still being taken well taken care of by the team on the ground, right? So I mean, our quest for great tasting food will always remain unchanged. So for the astronauts, this is for them. Okay, they work very hard in space, so they get to eat good food too. Okay, now we're going to keep this podcast really short because we want you guys to stay on Facebook page to watch our video, okay, on how the cosmonaut food tastes like and look like. So do stay tuned onto our Facebook because we are going to upload that video right after our podcast.
Right, and unfortunately, we are still unsure when the observatory will be open, but we are looking forward to meeting all of you soon. And tomorrow is actually Observe the Moon Night. So if you're outdoors, remember to look up and enjoy our beautiful moon.
That's right. So we're just going to say goodbye to you for now. Remember to stay on and watch our video, okay? So stay safe, stay curious, and
keep looking up.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.